If anyone in the comments is going to say, ooh, you're late, I don't want to hear it. This is about as on time as it gets. Wouldn't you say, Noah? Well, except for Noah. Noah's late.
It's still 8:50.
If you're going to berate anyone, go ahead and get this guy, because
Or just don't.
clearly he is to blame here. Let me just go make sure that this is all right, because I put the wrong time, because I'm very good at my job. Don't even worry about it, okay? It's so easy. Okay, we are live. Yay!
Nice.
Fantastic. Welcome. Someone said the resolution is bad again. Well, we can't do anything again. I really wish that we could, but there's literally nothing that I can do. We're on Ethernet. We have a 4K camera, a 4K capture card, and we're streaming in supposedly 1080p. Anyway, we got some good topics today. I like our lineup. I think we've got some good things to talk about.
Let me pull that up.
And I wrote an intro this time. I didn't forget.
Very good.
Love that. Someone said, I put the wrong time. It's Noah's fault. I mean, I guess if they said it.
I was not here when that was done, but if you would like to blame me, then go for it.
All right, we're going to just scapegoat Noah there. Sonny Dixon is here once again. Welcome. Someone said they thought it was a MacBook webcam. That is not... Oof. That's a pretty big insult, because MacBook webcams... I mean, I seriously can't believe that... When did they go to 720p? 2011?
I have no idea.
When was the first iSight HD? I mean, it was long enough ago that 720p was considered high definition. So that alone tells you something.
I mean, technically it still is, but...
I think it's not. Didn't they I'm pretty sure 720p is no longer... Because I know like 1080p used to be full HD,
yeah,
and 720p was HD. I'm pretty sure it's not anymore.
Well, who is they in this case?
I think there's a standard, a regulatory board that determines what qualifies for certain resolutions.
Interesting. I wonder who that is.
I'm gonna look this up. I bet you someone else is. I mean, someone here says 720p is SD. I think it has. Oh, I was right, by the way. The 720p FaceTime HD camera launched in 2011, and it's now 2021. It's been 10 years without a resolution bump.
Yep.
That is shocking. That's so bad. Oh no. And there's literally none. There's 0 MacBooks with a 1080p webcam.
I think it's especially interesting because Apple, and I guess now this is starting to sound like the actual podcast, but it's starting to almost sound, you look at the iPhones and they've done pretty good stuff with the front-facing cameras, and they added the portrait mode to the front-facing cameras and all that stuff. And then the Macs, they just don't touch them at all. Or I guess they did 1080p on the desktops, but not on the laptops. I don't know. It's just kind of weird to me.
It is. I mean, you have to wonder, given that the price point for nearly all Macs is higher than that of, or at least all Macs with the camera are more expensive than iPhones.
Right.
With the exception of 12 Pro Max and a MacBook Air, right? There's a little overlap there. But you have to imagine, could they not just put the same front-facing camera as the iPhone?
Yeah, I don't know.
That would actually be pretty sick. Because, I mean, clearly the profit margin wouldn't be that big a deal if they can put it, you know, they could take the front-facing camera from an iPhone SE. It's not bad.
Or they could take it from an iPhone 10, 11, 12 and give us Face ID.
I would not be mad about that.
I want it.
They could literally just copy and paste the iPhone's whole notch right into the bezel.
Yeah. I would be fine with that.
I think the problem is it's too thick, which would make me sad. But we got to talk about some super chats here. We got Cole Weathers, internet chest bump. Appreciate Cole as always. Cole is like single-handedly supported the channel at this point.
Yeah, pretty much every week. It's awesome.
And we've got Jose here with the super sticker, which do those look different on stream? I'm pretty sure StreamYard doesn't pick up what they actually look like. Is there like
yeah, there you go.
Okay, it's like a super effective. Oh, that's actually pretty cool.
I like that one.
That's a cool little sticker.
Very nice.
I've never used super stickers before. It's a good idea though. Little gifts.
I also see. Remember, you made Cole Weathers a mod last time.
I did.
And someone was spamming in the chat, and he timed them out.
Cole is already using his powers for good.
Yes,
That's what we love to see.
much appreciated.
That is phenomenal. I'm trying to look up. So if I will say this, if the new MacBook Pros, which we will talk about today because there was some news, both that I reported on, and actually there was a new Gurman report, which I know people are going to be interested in because everyone is always interested in those MacBook Pros because where the heck are they? But if they don't have 1080p webcams, then I think it's officially time for anarchy, really. Don't you think?
I think it's about time, and especially with all of the remote, online, Zoom, whatever kind of stuff.
I know, right?
On. I mean, I get
10 years
that the quality isn't that great over those, but like FaceTime, lots of people using FaceTime. They're putting a lot of work into FaceTime, like recording video. Like, come on,
dude! I will never in my life understand why the iMac doesn't have center stage. It is impossible to comprehend why they made that decision.
It doesn't.
Nope.
Just the iPad?
Just the iPad Pro.
Bro.
The iMac is thicker, more expensive, a stationary product that can't be readjusted even if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
What color should we do?
Ooh.
I kind of like that purple.
All right.
That's a good purple.
All right.
Got a little bit of vaporwave aesthetic going on this week. I'm digging it.
I like it.
I like it. Let me pull up our recording so that we're on time. Look at that. This is so professional. It's almost too professional. I think we should cut it back a little bit. But,
I mean, we had the timing mix up.
Yes.
So
and I just said but just then.
That was one. Yeah, that was one thing.
There we go. Now we're back in our comfort zone.
So we're doing all right. We're doing all right.
We are on track. Someone said that they hear a little echo. I don't know what that would be.
I couldn't tell you.
And hopefully it's a little less quiet because people have been saying that the audio is quiet, and there's not a ton. I mean, I'm using an H6, a Zoom recorder. That's where we're interfacing our XLR mics, and it's turned up enough that it's turned up as loud as we can get without it being like very peaky. So I don't know. I guess I'm just an idiot, but I can never figure out how to make audio loud and not terrible.
Yeah, I am no expert in that regard. This is the nicest microphone I've ever owned by far. Actually, it was just this and then the blue Snowball.
The Snowball is such a good value.
It's a good package. It is a good package. But my sister stole it some time ago, and I haven't seen it in a while.
Rip. Well, at least you got this one now. So
yeah,
there you go.
This is a good one.
Someone said Halo sounding. I don't know what. Oh my gosh.
Oh no.
You guys, it's been wow. That is interesting.
Oh no.
That is genuinely that's actually pretty interesting because now it should sound really different. It was actually using the iMac's webcam or the iMac microphones for the 24-inch iMac. Now we're on our actual microphones So I'm interested to see if people notice a difference. The fact that people weren't that surprised,
Yeah.
like they said they said the mic setting was a little different,
Yeah.
but still pretty impressive. A little embarrassing on our part. I guess we were talking about how it was too professional, and then
There you
the whole
go.
time we were
Maybe we don't need these mics then. Just use the built-in iMac.
great
mic.
idea. All right, let's get started, shall we?
All right.
Welcome to Dark Mode, the podcast that brings you sage advice from two technology experts. And that's not just what we call ourselves, it's what our moms tell their friends when the smart oven downloads 5G. I'm your host, Luke Miani.
And I'm your host, Noah Rubin. On this show, we take questions from listeners, attempt to answer them to varying degrees of success, and maybe even have a laugh or two along the way.
All right, I can't wait any longer, Noah. I think we got to talk about the MacBook Pro news over the past week.
All right.
Now, your boy's been doing a little bit of leaking. I've been doing a little bit of leaking, and you've been doing a little bit of not silencing your Apple Watch, huh?
Well, it was leaking some
Some
notifications there. Yeah.
Very good, very
There you
good.
go.
So, I guess we'll start with the three things that I reported on.
All right.
So the first one, I guess, arguably the most not interesting, the least interesting, one might say,
Uh-huh.
is dedicated backlight for the Touch ID sensor.
Mm-hmm.
And because we haven't talked about this a whole lot because we've both been pretty busy. I'm curious to know what your thoughts on that are. Multiple dedicated LEDs for the Touch ID sensor.
I did see it was Renders by Ian, right? Made a render of that.
Yeah.
The render looked pretty sick, but in like real life, I don't know how sick it would actually look.
I think it's pretty cool, honestly. Like, okay, it's not groundbreaking. It's not like some crazy feature, but in my opinion, it does make sense because when you look at the iMac keyboard, really, this is basically the keyboard design that we're expecting to see on the new MacBook Pros. And by the way, I believe we are going back to the full height left.
I was
right.
actually about to ask about
Were you?
that. I was.
That's funny. I think it's going to be full height.
Interesting.
There were some leaked images that seem to say that. What I don't know is about the rounding on the corners,
Mm-hmm.
because that's something that they just brought to the iMac. But I wouldn't call this like the new keyboard look because it's basically the same as before, but they just made it rounder. And the iMac keyboard with the tall keys has coexisted with the MacBook keyboard, and in fact, the iPad Magic keyboard that have the, I would say, better way of doing it with half height, all four keys. But back to the the Touch ID backlight. If you actually look at the keyboard for this iMac, obviously it's not backlit, so this doesn't give us much of an indication. But without a touch bar, these upper row of function keys, which by the way I'm pretty sure will be full height,
Interesting.
unlike the MacBook Air.
Interesting.
So you'll have full height function keys, and obviously they'll all be backlit. But if the Touch ID sensor wasn't backlit, I feel like it would look weird. Don't you think it would look a little strange to have, the fully backlit keyboard, but then have this one button that's just dark?
That's true because the Touch ID used to look the Touch ID on the laptops is very distinctive. It's that little black box, and it's next to the touch bar, or it's its own little button. But I guess if they're going to make it actually look like a key like they do for the iMac, then it's a little bit different. And yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe it would look a little bit weird if it weren't backlit.
Yeah, and also I think it's a pretty decent chance. I mean, I sort of came to this in the reverse conclusion of like I had this information saying it's going to be backlit.
Mm-hmm.
And from there I thought, oh, it'll probably be the same Touch ID sensor that we have on the iMac. Now, obviously mine, the one that I was holding up is just the base model iMac that just has the lock key. But I'm pretty sure all of these MacBook, every MacBook has Touch ID now, so it's, I think, pretty guaranteed that it would have that. and I think it'll have that little ring, and I think that little metal ring is going to be lit. So that was what Renders by Ian. If you guys are listening, go ahead and look him up on Twitter, because he put out a render of what it would look like, and I think it looks really cool.
Yeah.
I also have to wonder, with 4 dedicated LEDs, I mean, that's kind of a lot. Multiple LEDs for a Touch ID sensor backlight. Now, I think since 2016, they went to individually lit keys.
Okay.
So each key has its own LED, which reduced spill around the key and also made it just looks a little bit better. With multiple LEDs, I personally am hoping that it would have like a little animation.
Oh yeah, like kind of spin around kind of thing.
Exactly.
That'd
That's what
be
I was thinking
cool.
about. Because like, you know how you have a Touch Bar Mac
Yes.
and you have one for work as well.
Yes.
When you open it up and you're on the lock screen, the touch bar has like that little arrow thing that says Touch ID here, touch to unlock. You're not going to have that without a touch bar.
I didn't even think of that part. That's really interesting.
Right?
I was going to ask you, so does the fact that it's 4 LEDs, that's one of your leaks?
I didn't actually say 4 before. But
so this is an exclusive.
Multiple, yes, I guess so. But I don't know about the number. That's not confirmed.
But multiple
from the source that I had. But multiple, yeah.
And do the other keys have multiple LEDs?
Not as far as I know. I mean, the
Interesting.
information that I received was specifically about the Touch ID sensor.
I see.
So it's saying multiple LEDs. Personally, another thing that we don't know, I kind of just assumed that it's backlit like any other key, but it's possible that it could have colors. So I was thinking like, when you Apple Pay and it has the little blue circle, if it's lighting up a ring, why wouldn't it just do a little blue like flitting? The little sound effect? That'd be sick.
I would honestly kind of be surprised if they did that, but that would actually be pretty cool, I will say.
I think it would be awesome. I mean, awesome relative to an illuminated key, right? It's not that big a deal. There's definitely bigger things out there, and I don't think anyone really cares.
You're gonna be like covering it up with your finger. You're gonna like barely see
a little bit
the ring, but
yeah, well, whatever, it's fine.
I don't know.
But so then the other leak was UHS 2 SD card. Now that one I think is a pretty big deal. Granted, for a lot of general consumers, it might not make much of a difference, but as an exclusive UHS 2 user myself with my iMac Pro, that is absolutely huge. Now, I'm not particularly keen on, I'm not going to switch to a MacBook Pro to do all of my video editing. I'm a desktop guy. There's really just there's no need for me to use a laptop when a desktop is better suited. But
fair.
A ton of people buy 15 and 16-inch MacBook Pros for photo and video work, and a ton of those people use SD cards. Now, I shoot on UHS 2, partially because so basically, I guess I should explain UHS 2. I can't remember what the acronym is. I think it's ultra high speed,
probably.
I think it's ultra high speed standard. But basically, a normal SD card can clock around 100 megabytes per second, but UHS 2 are rated up to 312 megabytes per second read-write. Obviously, the write speeds are usually lower than the reads, but the reason that I shoot on UHS 2 is because my camera, which I'm using right now, a Sony a7S III, can shoot 4K 120 frames, which is a lot of data to be writing. Especially, I shoot in 8-bit, but I can shoot in 10-bit. 10-bit melts my iMac Pro, and it also melts my SD cards. But I need to, if I shoot in 120, I have to shoot on UHS 2 SD cards. And to get the stuff off of that, it literally takes, I would say, probably 4 times longer to use a normal SD card versus a UHS 2. So that's huge.
Wow.
If you're talking about workflow, it's it's not enough to just make it render faster or export faster. If you can import your footage 4 times faster, before you even get to the processor, you're already out on top.
That is true. That's interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of creative professionals, and amateurs that use Macs for photos and videos and stuff, like you said. So it does make a lot of sense. And like the port is it shorter than USB-C, or it's like about the same height as USB-C probably?
Oh, it's pretty significantly shorter. The SD card slot, at least the way that Apple implements it, is very slim. There's plenty of room for it.
Yeah, so like there's plenty of room for it. Makes a lot of sense. And now I'm curious because I use SD cards extremely rarely. Could I leave an SD card in there and use it like a storage expansion?
That's a really good question, actually. Yes. So there are before 2016, there was a company that made it was an SD card that was a shorter height, so you would put it in and it lay flush.
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, because they were pretty expensive, but this is like 2015, so NAND was pretty expensive anyway. They had like 256 gigabyte ones, and you could put them in the SD card slot on the old Retinas and the MacBook Airs, and they were color matched and they lay flush instead of sticking out like a normal SD card. That would actually be really useful, especially if it's UHS 2 and you're getting SSD. It's basically like having an external SSD that's always plugged in.
Yeah.
With 300 megabyte per second read writes. That's very respectable. That is I wonder if I didn't even think about that, but that's actually huge, because that means that I think there's a decent number of people could get away with not paying for storage and just buying let's look up like a 512 gigabyte SD card.
They're not expensive.
Wow,
anymore.
$80. $80 for, I mean, granted, that's not a UHS 2.
There is one $125.
That's UHS 1, though. That's still not quite. That's 170 megabytes per second. So that's pretty good. But 512 gigabyte UHS 2. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, UHS 2 gets pretty expensive. It does get pretty expensive. I forgot about that because I've had mine. I think mine came with my camera. It was in a bundle or something. But yeah, so 256 gigabytes is about $250 for UHS 2. Although I'm fairly certain that prices are a little inflated right now. But even if you went for something like a SanDisk Extreme Pro, it's not UHS 2, but it's pretty fast. 170 megabytes per second. Leave that inserted all the time. That's a pretty good idea.
And now, how does that compare to paying Apple for the internal storage? Isn't it usually like $200 per doubling, or is that not true anymore?
I think it is. I don't know about when you go to a terabyte. Let's find out.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Because I know it used to be like 400 to go to a terabyte.
From where?
From 512.
Oh, really?
I thought. I don't know. They've messed around with it in 2019. They made it a lot cheaper, or I should say, a lot less highway robbery-esque.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it is 200 to double. That's so dumb. Why is it $200 to go from 256 to 512? An extra 256 gigabytes, but then it's also $200 to go from 512 to a terabyte.
Yeah,
that's really dumb.
Really weird. But then from 1 terabyte to 2 terabytes is $400.
Yeah. Why is I think 256 to 512 should be 100 by that logic.
Yeah. But then that would be too good of a price.
Yeah, that's right. And then people would actually do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, oh man, if they made that actually a thing, $100 to go to 512, I mean, that's still pretty bad. But like,
It's honestly worth it, and it's like it's internal, so it's gonna be fast, and you don't have to like move stuff between your drives. Like that's the main thing is like, and that was the thing that I liked about Fusion drives back. When I had my 2011 MacBook Pro. It's really like it is really convenient to not have to manage the files yourself, and it just it can move them around.
that's true. That's a good point. Now, so we had the third rumor for this new MacBook Pro that I published last week. I don't even remember. Every time is a blur. But anyway, there is a pretty decent chance. This one I'm less confident about. I'm almost 100% on the other two.
Okay.
The UHS 2 makes so much sense. It's pretty ironclad info. Same with the Touch ID. This one I'm really on the fence about because I've seen compelling information, but it contradicts Mark Gurman, and that's not a bet that I'm usually willing to take.
Interesting.
Because Mark Gurman is the guy who knows things, and I'm the guy who doesn't know things. That's like what we're known as colloquially.
I see.
Everyone's like, oh, did you ask the guy who doesn't know things? And they're like, why would I? He doesn't know things.
Yeah.
And that's me.
That's you.
But I was seeing pretty credible intel saying, intel.
Yeah.
Oopsie. Saying that there will not be a 64 gigabyte RAM option on the new 16-inch, where there currently is one on the existing 16-inch.
Interesting.
It's an interesting little predicament. Now, I wouldn't say that there's precedent for this. Actually, there maybe is. So the 13-inch MacBook Pro can have 8 or 16, and people are like, oh, no, but you can't get 32 in it anymore. The 32 gigabyte RAM option was never available on the 2-port one. So while I would agree with you that 32 gigabytes would be a nice option to have, it wasn't technically a downgrade because the higher tier 4 Thunderbolt port Intel MacBook Pro 13-inch was the one that had those options and still does.
Mm-hmm.
You could make the argument for the iMac though, because the previous iMac could have like 64 gigs, and now you can only get 16.
Right.
Granted, they definitely played around with the targeting for this iMac, which is, I think, what bothered people. Like, the previous iMac, obviously before Apple Silicon, was pretty powerful for its size and price. And the problem was pros kind of just didn't really like it because the prosumer way to go was always 27-inch iMacs.
Right.
Most of us just kind of ignored the 21.5-inch because who wants a 21.5-inch screen?
Right.
Even though you could get it with a Vega 20, you could get it with a Core i7, 64 gigs of RAM, or maybe they only sold 32, but you could upgrade it to 64. Either way, now it's less than that. But they've also clearly retargeted the iMac to be a little bit more broad. Because I think it probably, I suspect that the 21.5-inch iMac never really sold very well. But I think that'll change now. However, as it pertains to the MacBook Pro, for the 16-inch, if it is in fact limited to 32 gigabytes, that would be a little bit of a bummer. Now, granted, we're looking here at the order page for the current 16-inch MacBook Pro, which, by the way, is a terrible deal to buy new. And you got to pay 400 buckaroonies for 32 gigs and 800 for 64. So my general thought is, yes, there are going to be PCMR haters that are going to be like, oh, it's a downgrade. There's less RAM than you could have before. But how many people were actually spending $800 on RAM alone? That's absurd.
And this is this the lower tier or the higher tier MacBook Pro?
Option is the same for both because they both have 16 gigabytes as standard.
Gotcha.
And that I believe will also stay the same. No 8 gigabyte M1X.
Okay, good. Yeah, I've had 16 gigs for a very long time, Maybe 32 would be kind of cool. I don't know. I would have to see how much RAM I use when I'm doing like my intensive work that how intensive it may be.
True.
But 64, I can't. I mean, at least for me, and I feel like for a lot of people, I don't think you need that much.
I really don't think you do. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't dismiss it because I have 128 gigabytes in my iMac Pro, and
True.
When I have Final Cut going with Photoshop and I'm uploading a video and I'm writing a script and I've got like a couple of things, I go over 100 gigabytes of RAM usage. That has happened multiple times. In fact, even just because I usually leave Final Cut Pro open in the background, which I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know. But it'll sit there just idling with like 20 gigs of RAM, just sipping. It's like a pina colada, just sipping that RAM.
I think it will do, because I think Mac OS, if you have spare RAM, it'll just keep like recently opened files in there so that it's quicker to open them. So I feel like Final Cut, I feel like when you have the extra RAM, maybe you may or may not actually use that much RAM. If you have extra RAM sitting around, programs can take advantage of it and leave, like, I'm sure Final Cut leaves a lot of the like video stuff in RAM so that the playback is quicker and the editing is quicker or whatever. So like having extra RAM can have those effects and like speed other things up. But like 64, and I mean it's a laptop too. Like you're talking about your iMac Pro, laptop versus desktop kind of debate. I don't know. 64 just seems like a lot, and like you said, $800.
I mean, right now it's actually kind of insane to me how expensive the 16-inch is, given all that we know now about Apple Silicon. Because I just did a video on this. The 16-inch, the i9 is maybe 15% more powerful than an M1 in the best case scenario. And you maybe get 30% at most gains when running Blender, through Rosetta on the M1. Like it's not that much more powerful. But right now, if you spec out a 16-inch, it's $6,700.
I mean, that is with 8 terabytes of storage, but
even with 1 terabyte though, and normal graphics, it goes above 3,000 so easily.
I just think it's really funny that when this laptop came out, wasn't that the whole thing that like it like undercut the old laptops, and it was like a really good deal when it came out, and then Apple Silicon like obliterated that. It's kind of crazy.
It's absolutely nuts because when it came out, I mean, granted, the one that I have spec'd out, I've got the 2.3 gigahertz i9 because why on earth would you pay $200 for 0.1 gigahertz? It's stupid. No one should have ever made that upgrade. I paid $400 for 32 gigabytes of RAM. Oof. I paid $100 for the extra VRAM in the Radeon Pro 5500M, which I probably didn't need to do, but whatever. And then I kept the storage at 1 terabyte, and that was $3,300, and that was a good deal. Because my 2019 15-inch MacBook Pro, which I actually got for free, had the upgraded processor. It had the upgraded 32 gigs of RAM, and it had the upgraded, at the time, 1 terabyte SSD. Base graphics, it's got the 560X. It was $3,900 new when they gave it to me. And I was like, holy crap. So that's why the 16-inch was so good. It was $500 less for better performance in every possible respect, and better battery life, and a better keyboard. And now even that looks like garbage compared to an M1 MacBook Pro.
It's a testament.
It's crazy. And I think we're at the point where we're even taking M1 for granted nowadays.
Everyone's talking about M1X or M2 or whatever.
We're getting antsy here. In fact, this actually brings us pretty neatly into our next topic, which was Gurman's leak. Everyone is freaking out. Well, I say everyone. I've gotten angry emails. People are like, "Where's the MacBook Pro?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't have it." Like, I don't know. People. There were a select few people that were like, "Luke, you got my hopes up," and I'm like, my hopes were up too. I was just reporting on the news. I didn't come up with, none of that was like my invention. A lot of sources were saying WWDC, but apparently, I think it's honestly for the best that we didn't get it at Dub because now we're most likely going to get, almost certainly going to get mini LED, which I think is pretty cool. I think that's a pretty good upgrade, especially considering that reportedly Apple doesn't want to increase the price. I don't know if they will, because it's a lot to add.
Yeah.
A lot of features, a lot of performance. Maybe they will increase the price and maybe it'll be justified, or maybe people will just use it as an excuse to hate Apple without actually knowing anything about why that happened. Either way, we'll find out. But Mark Gurman is reporting that the redesigned MacBook Pros could launch between September and November. Now, that might not sound particularly new insofar as I think people have generally sort of expected that since WWDC. But I've been talking to some people, and people are very pessimistic about the timing of this. So right now, what I've been thinking is, I think we'll be lucky to get a 16-inch this year. I think we will be. I think it might be a next year thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was the last time I asked you about it. You were pretty pessimistic about this year.
I was. Now, I think Gurman is pretty solid, although he did say as early as this summer. Now, one thing that a lot of leakers do that I tried to not do in the three little tidbits because I wanted to try to be like a little concrete about it. But one thing that pretty much any reporter does with these sort of leaks is they leave a little bit of open-endedness to cover for uncertainty, or more likely what happens very often, as I've now found out, having done some firsthand reporting, is things can be correct when you report them and end up being incorrect.
Yeah.
Like you can have legitimate, credible insider sources sending you actual info, and then it ends up being wrong because Apple changes their mind pretty frequently. So this is now, I guess what helps here is that this is now the second time that Gurman has said this.
Okay.
Because in May he said as early as this summer, and a lot of people interpreted that as WWDC. Other leakers were saying WWDC, and so we all kind of ran with that. But now we're getting another report by Gurman saying September, October, November. That lines up with what we would expect, except I don't think it's going to be September. I don't think iPhone month. I think it's a bit too sacred.
I don't think they've never done. Have they ever done two events in a
1
single
month?
month?
No.
I wouldn't think so.
No.
And then the iPhone event is iPhone and Apple Watch. They're not going to put
Yeah, they're not going to put
the
a Mac
Max in there.
because the problem is an iPhone is already like, even though I'm pretty sure we're going back to normal event style, I think we're going back to like in-person events,
Oh man.
which is kind of a bummer because I really do like the virtual events. I think they absolutely nailed them.
Yeah, they were really good.
WWDC was arguably boring, but that's because it was what it's supposed to be, which is software. And then the software itself was arguably underwhelming.
Yeah.
But I think the only reason that it was so disappointing was because people wanted MacBook Pros. And we didn't get them.
Yeah.
But the event itself was very good, very well paced. It was longer. It was like an hour 40, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a decent length. But yeah, they're like super like obviously professional, but like they're really well put together. They're like super fast paced because there's not all the clapping between everything and
the
bringing
weird
people
awkward
up.
pauses where people don't
Yeah.
know whether they should cheer or not. And Tim is standing there like waiting, like, hey, are you guys going to give me something or am I just going to have to power through this?
Yeah, I hope if they go, I guess I understand the in-person events because, they have the press there and whatever. I hope they can find some middle ground to keep some of the new elements, even if they have to go back to the in-person events. I don't know what that would look like.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they just lean more on videos because I feel like they did that with the virtual stuff.
Yeah.
Although the location changes were really what made it so fun.
Yeah, like the camera
Getting to
flying
see all
through.
around Apple Park.
Yeah.
It was really nice. I liked that a lot.
I'll be interested to see what the next Apple event looks like.
Yeah. So I mean, realistically, we're less than 2 months. Most likely.
Yeah.
I'm thinking September 14th for the iPhone event this
I'll
year.
mark my calendar.
Yeah, mark it down. It's got to be a Tuesday, so it's either the 7th or the 14th or maybe the 23rd. I've looked at the calendar recently. I don't just know these dates off the top of my head. Anyway, so Gurman and the reason that I bring that up about how things change is that Gurman noted that Apple had originally planned to release these earlier in the year, but Mini LED has been shall we say, a complicated launch.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the stock for the iPad Pro is still pretty back ordered. I'll check now because it slipped into July way back in May, like when people were pre-ordering them. So if you do just a normal one with no options, right now. Oh wait, no, that's the
Pencil.
That's the Pencil delivers very quickly. The actual iPad delivers July 27th. That's not actually okay. That's actually gotten better.
Yeah.
That has gotten better. I almost wonder if changing to like one of the mid-tier storage would speed that up because sometimes those are less often purchased. No engraving. I don't know why never engrave your Apple products. It's terrible for the environment. But yeah, so July 27th, that's definitely faster. Now, you could argue that that's just because people have actually bought them now, but whatever. Oh, also, Sonny Dixon is saying probably no live events this year. Honestly, good. I hope so.
Yeah.
Maybe the return to in person would be Dub next year. That would make sense.
Yeah, honestly, I could see them taking an overabundance of caution and just saying, we're gonna, because I mean the tech companies have been pretty slow to bring people back, and
You
even
can speak to that.
I can speak to that. Yeah. The tech companies have been pretty slow to bring people back, and even when they're bringing people back, they're still doing like a lot of the big tech companies are doing like hybrid work weeks. So like in office 3 days, remote work 2 days. So it's still very, and this is for their employees. So if you're talking about like press and other people that they're inviting, yeah, I could definitely see them taking extra time, and no complaints from me if they keep the current format.
Oh, and Sonny Dixon adding on to that has a really good point. The overseas press can't come.
That's true.
So there you go. Well, that's good. This is good news. I think that there, especially the 3 in a row that we had last year, was really great. I really loved their event lineup last year. I think it was awesome. The September event was very fun. Apple Watch and the iPad Air. It wasn't huge, but it was fun. We were all in lockdown. It was very well produced.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had October, which was the iPhone event, which of course was fun. Was there anything else there? Was it just iPhones?
I don't remember.
I can't remember.
Couldn't
either.
have been just iPhone. Oh,
I mean,
HomePod Mini.
Oh, HomePod Mini. You're
There
right.
you go.
Yeah,
That's all it was. Just iPhones and HomePod Mini.
yeah, and like a 40-minute event, and then of course the Apple Silicon event, which was my personal favorite.
Well,
obviously.
of course.
That one was just amazing.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know what they would announce, but I would love another triple threat. I would love a September, October, November.
They could just do. I mean, it's going to be a new iPhone. There's going to be a new Apple Watch.
Yep.
There's going to be obviously more Macs need Apple Silicon. Whether they come or not is another question. But
they need him.
They need them.
Running out of time on this 2-year transition here, Timmy.
I don't know.
Timmy boy.
They have enough that they need to do that they could fill 3 more events. Will they actually? I don't know.
Well, I'm trying to think if they. So imagine this, hypothetically, right?
Okay.
You got September, iPhone, and Apple Watch.
Yeah.
Guaranteed, pretty much.
Yeah.
October, redesigned iPad Mini. A base model iPad refresh, perhaps.
Yeah.
HomePod, AirPods 3. They could put that in an event.
Yeah.
If it's supposed to be like this new design with no stems.
Right.
There's an event with the little 40-minute virtual ones. Sure, why not?
I'll take
And
it.
then November, 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro and Mac Mini with M1X.
That would be a pretty packed event. I would like that.
I would be a happy boy. I would be a certified happy boy.
And they could do AirTags Max.
AirTags Max. Oh my gosh. Imagine that. Wow.
That would be very interesting.
What additional functionality would you get with AirTags Max?
I don't know. I guess the speaker would be
Oh,
even
yes.
better.
What if it's also a HomePod?
Oh, a HomePod.
It's a HomePod that tracks, and then you could put little messages on it.
Or you could put like a screen on it.
I was thinking maybe. So, and then could it have like legs?
Yeah.
So it could like track, and then it could have like a voice, and then it could have like a little screen, and it could have like a little virtual assistant that talks to you, and then it could have like little crab legs.
Oh boy.
And it could crawl along with you. And maybe could it like go up walls?
That would be very interesting.
I think that's a good idea.
It would be
And it follows you around.
it would be an what was it? An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator.
Yes.
An iPod. Are you getting it?
Are you getting it? It's one device. We call it AirTags Max. The crab.
There you go.
There we go. That's the big one right there. Also, I wanted to say someone's talking about someone said just M1X with a question mark and no other context. I don't know what that means, but also apparently it might not be M1X. It might not. It's definitely not M2. By the way, no way.
That's fair.
So I talked about this on Twitter because I've been hearing some chatter that's saying not M1X, the naming scheme.
Are you sure that's not the voices in your head?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Not 100%.
Okay.
But the point being, it might not be M1X, but it's not M2. We know that because that would just completely muck up the whole naming scheme.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pose this to you, but first to the viewers. What would it be if not M1X or M2? This next 10-core chip with the beefier graphics for the new MacBook Pro. What do you think?
Well, do you want to pose it to me? You said you were going to pose it to the viewers.
Oh, yeah.
And then pose
So
it
Noah,
to me. Yes.
if it's not going to be called M1X or M2, what do you think this new chip is going to be called?
Oh, very interesting question.
Yeah.
Given Apple, like M1X is the obvious answer. The only other things I can think of would be M1Z,
Mhm.
which I don't think makes sense
Doesn't
to
really.
skip X and go to Z,
Yeah.
or like M1 Pro. I don't
Ooh,
I don't know.
That's possible.
That's
Actually.
the only other thing that I can think of, and a lot of people in the chat are saying. Someone said M1.5,
M1 SE,
M1 SE, okay.
M1 Max,
Yeah,
M1 Pro. Yeah, a lot of people are saying M1 Pro. Someone said M3. Just skip 2 altogether, I guess. We're just leapfrogging it. So this is the one that I've personally liked. I've seen a couple of suggestions. X1.
Oh, I see. So M is for the consumer level and X is for the pro level. I guess?
Like M for mobile and X for xylophone.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Are there any other words that start with X?
Xenophobe.
Ah, perfect. That's what it'll be.
That's what it'll
short
be.
for. Yeah, that's a good one. Someone said Super M. I'm sure that's so catchy. M 1.1. PowerPC M.
I don't know about that.
M1 Lite, sort of the opposite direction there.
Yeah.
Xenomorph. There we go.
Oh, that's a
That's
good
what it
one.
stands for, I bet. But yeah, so I think, I don't know, X1, I feel like X1 might make sense, except that it might conflict with Xfinity.
That's
Isn't
true.
That what they call their router, or is it their internet plan? What are they?
That's their like X1 is their like on demand video, or it's their whole. I don't know what it is. It's
Hmm.
just it's some Xfinity thing. I didn't think about that.
It's
But it
it's
is.
funny though because we're sitting here brainstorming all of this, and I guarantee this is the same conversation that was had at Apple. I mean, have you seen their marketing names? It's not like they're all just like genius.
Yeah.
I have an iPhone 12 Pro Max. How many suffixes is too many? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Or remember when the iPad, when they just dropped the numbers and confused everyone, they just called it the new iPad?
Mm-hmm.
What the heck was that all about? That was the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
That was
Then
weird.
it had to be retroactively named given generation. And then like even now there's just iPad, but it's technically the iPad 7th generation, but it's not like a linear generation because there hasn't always been the normal iPad. It's a mess. I wouldn't exactly count on Apple making a ton of sense here. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting. I think we had we wanted to talk about the macOS Monterey Safari update.
Oh yeah.
That made me sad.
I'm sorry.
I was really sad about that. If you guys are on the Monterey beta and you have recently updated, they put the tabs back. They put the tabs back to usual, and I'm like, what the heck is that all about, huh? So the whole point of the new Safari, which it still is on the iPad, as you well know, is that the tab itself sort of expanded and the search bar was in the tab and you could like rearrange them. Really, I think pretty innovative approach as far as tabs go. I mean, there's not a ton of innovation you can do with tabs, but that is a pretty good idea. It basically collapsed the whole top menu bar from the stupid search bar. Okay, and I'm looking at it now, and it's so dumb, and I hate it. It's so stupid. Because they changed it back to basically the way that it was before, but with the new, like, more rounded iOS-looking tab icons. And it's so dumb, because the whole top bar is just a whole bunch of empty space, and then a really wide bar with the shortened URL that's centered with more empty space. You have it's like a good half an inch at the top of the whole window, which is literally just to say apple.com, the website that you're on. Yeah. And it's using up half an inch of your screen real estate. I hate that. That's dumb.
I also think the tabs look worse now. Like, first of all, you can barely tell which one is active.
Yes.
That's first of all, I feel like that's an accessibility thing because contrast is like really important in accessibility. And the selected tab versus the non-selected tab, the selected one is slightly darker gray, but you can barely tell.
And it's even worse because when you hover over the non-selected tab, it becomes a darker gray than the tab that is selected.
Yeah.
So there's 3 different grays.
Slightly different.
There's background gray, there's current gray, and there's maybe future gray.
That's
why
one way to put it.
And when you hover over the tab that you're already on, it doesn't become the dark future gray. It stays the same. It's inconsistent. It's a waste of space. It's dumb. It's stupid. It's mean. I don't much care for it. If I open up, look, with a bunch of tabs, you literally can't tell which tab you're on. It's so, I've got a window open with, 7 tabs?
Yeah.
And you can barely tell. Like, if you just unfocus your eyes or use your peripheral view, you cannot easily identify which tab you're on.
You have to look. You have to look for, it's like which one is slightly, it's like one of those puzzle. I feel like that would be on one of those internet IQ tests.
Yes.
They'd be like, which one of these is slightly darker gray than the rest of them?
Or the pattern that you look at to find out if you're colorblind or not.
Yeah.
It's like that. Ugh. What were they thinking? What were they thinking? Ugh, I hate it. Put it back. It's so much better on the iPad. I'm mad.
I don't know. It's interesting because I think they changed it because a lot of people didn't like. There were some controversial parts of the new design, but I feel like that the merged tab and URL bar was pretty good. And yeah, like you said, I have it on my iPad and I like it a lot.
50 Shades of Safari.
Pretty much.
All these grays, man. It's too much. Oh, What does it look like in dark mode?
Interesting.
I feel like we should, given that is our namesake, we should try it.
Wrong tab.
Whoop.
Yeah, let's see.
Okay, let's find out.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
no, it's not changing. Let's try relaunching Safari. Okay, so now the tab that's selected is a lighter gray,
Yeah.
and it's very, very slightly lighter. Oh no! And when you hover over the other tab, it becomes darker now. So that's inconsistent.
Barely.
And it's so barely noticeable that you can't even tell.
Jeez.
That's awful. That's truly terrible. I can't believe that. They totally ruined Mac OS. It's done.
That's it.
I'm gonna
It's
switch
funny
to
because
Linux.
this is more or less how it is right now on Big Sur. Obviously, the colors aside, this behavior is basically what we have right now. But then they give you the new thing. Apple giveth and Apple taketh away.
And they tooketh away so soon.
Yeah, yeah.
Why couldn't they have taketh it later? Why couldn't they have waited a year an update?
We are not meant to understand Apple.
That's true. One cannot comprehend the mind of an incomprehensible mind. My goodness. Okay, yeah, I feel like I saw that you wrote it down. I gotta address it. Someone said, where's the OnlyFans? The OnlyFans is out. You can find it. I linked to it in a, don't say it like that. I don't like that. You can find it linked in, I tweeted about it, but it's probably hard to find on Twitter. I also did a community post on YouTube. That's probably the easiest way to find it. And I'll probably mention it exactly once.
I'll go ahead and put a link in the chat while you're talking about it.
How kind of you.
I'll do you a favor here.
Oh, wow. That's so, you don't have to.
No, don't worry about it.
No, it's okay. You don't, all right.
Ooh, I feel like, okay, I'm using Safari on
the new beta 5.
This is the latest beta. I feel like they slightly tweaked how it's still the merged view, but it feels a little bit different. Which is weird.
I think the tabs overlap now instead of collapsing. But
Yeah.
I can't remember if they did that before.
Like this, when I hover over the tab and then the refresh button shows up, that's definitely new. And I feel
that.
like when I click on it and it expands out,
Does
I feel
that
like
look different?
it didn't expand out as much. And then this, I feel like they changed something. I don't know.
Maybe. Damn, you're really just.
Here we go. Oh wait, that's the original tweet. You can keep explaining. I'll get it up here.
Good grief. Explain. I mean, there's really nothing else to explain. That's basically it. And Cole said, "Wait, why am I paying $50 here if the OnlyFans exists?"
There's gonna be is the picture that I'm thinking of.
What?
Yeah.
No.
My favorite picture.
No.
Are you? And you're not gonna mention that.
I don't. No, I'm not gonna mention it.
There's a good picture that will be up there at some point.
Maybe
and that will be worth.
Maybe.
Oh come on.
I don't like it.
Oh come on.
No.
All right.
I don't like it.
I won't say any more.
Ugh. Anyway, moving on from that topic that I don't want to talk about. And by the way, I made one promise, and that promise is that I would make an OnlyFans. I made no promises about its content, the amount that I post, or how much it would cost. So beyond the fact that it exists, if you have any complaints, you can suck it. I don't care.
Jeez.
Hey, I make free videos all the time. I'm not. Wow, you really found it, didn't you?
Oh, I found it.
Man.
It was a little bit harder than it should have been. I will say.
By the way, some people are like, "Ooh, should I get the OnlyFans?" Please don't. I made it paid as a deterrent because I knew that no one would want to pay for it.
Well, but some people did, right? It's like 20.
I think like
20,
20
right?
people.
I mean, that's
which is entirely too many.
That's something.
Or can you see? Go up to the top.
I don't think I can see.
Oh, good.
More info? Nope.
Did you like? I've set the location as town.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, anyway, we had, I think, to close off this episode, we've got a question from perhaps our biggest fan, if you know what I mean.
I think you could say that.
So basically, they sent a picture of a fan. They said, "I'm your biggest," and then had a JPEG of a fan, a very large
fan.
So they asked the following question. This is from Carlos, which, by the way, if you have a question, send it to us at submissions@darkmodepodcast.com. That's where we like to read. A lot of our topics come from there. Even if we don't mention them out loud, we get a lot of ideas from here.
Yeah.
macOS Catalina supported the 2012 MacBook Pro until 2019. El Capitan was released in 2015, supported MacBooks up to late 2008. That's 7 years. Do you think Intel Macs will be that lucky? Now, that's an interesting question because I think we also have to consider that there are some slight variations in terms of like the 2012 MacBook Pro was supported until macOS Catalina in 2019, which is 7 years, but Catalina lasted a year.
True.
So it didn't get dropped until it was 8 years old.
True.
The same thing I think would be said for 2008 MacBooks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when a product gets dropped, like, so for right now, right, we just what supports I think most of the Monterey dropped 2013 stuff. Do they not have a page for Monterey that's like easy to click on?
There should be like a preview the next.
I don't see it.
Wait, it might be.
Well, either way, let's go. So Big Sur supported the oldest machines that it supported were the late 2013 MacBook Pro and the mid 2013 MacBook Air. Both of those have been dropped. Now, weirdly, they also, so I think what people were confused about was they dropped the 2014 iMac. And that was a little out of character because right now, like, basically, Macs get supported for 8 years. Catalina was the last to support the mid 2012 MacBook Pro, but as I said, it lasted a year. Right now, the oldest MacBook Pro. Oh, they dropped the 2014 too. That is weird. Okay, yeah, no, this kind of blows.
Yeah.
So 2012 and 2013 Macs got 8 years of support. The 2014 Mac got 7 years of support.
Interesting.
And so I would only hope then that the current slate should last longer. Now, they did also drop the early 2015 MacBook, the 12-inch, but that's because it's very terrible. I don't think it has anything to do with like, oh, they're trying to kill off Intel. I think it's just because it sucks. It's literally less powerful than an iPhone 6.
Fair enough.
So, good riddance. But I think it's quite curious that we lost a lot of 2014 devices because history tells us that should have taken another year. It could be like a little fluke. I know sometimes certain devices get dropped because of like Wi-Fi module support. I think that's what happened with the early 2013 MacBook Pro.
Interesting.
Which got dropped in Big Sur, where the late 2013 stuck around. But either way, I think it's a pretty safe bet that Intel Macs will be supported for, on average, 7 years. I'll knock a year off just to be safe. Because like right now, like you got to keep in mind that right now, the 2015 Macs that are supported are 6 years old. But macOS Monterey hasn't come out yet and will last another year. So they'll be 7 by the time they're dropped, if they're dropped. If they're renewed for another year, then they'll be 8 years old. Because they'll last through 2023 to macOS Big Rock. That's what they'll call it, probably.
macOS Big Rock.
Yes.
You heard it here first.
Predicted 2 years in advance.
It's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be very curious. It honestly wouldn't surprise me all that much if the Intel Macs were lost slightly earlier because of switch to M1. Now, obviously, that would suck for the people that bought the relatively new Intel Macs, but as it stands, now Apple is in the position again, like they were with PowerPC and Intel, where they have to support both versions. You have the Universal 2 apps, which do take up more space on your drive. You can remove the binary that doesn't apply to you. I know, like Clean My Mac, that's like one of the things that it does.
Oh,
actually,
that's pretty smart.
So
that's
like
good.
if you're on an Intel Mac, it'll delete the Apple Silicon binaries from all the applications. This is not an ad, by the way. It's just something I remember. They've sponsored me before. I know they've sponsored you before, but this is not an ad. I just remember from the PowerPC and Intel that they had that feature.
Oh, really?
To delete the PowerPC. Like,
they resurrected it 15 years later.
I actually don't know if they did. I'm assuming that they did. I don't know. But I just remember, like, on my very old Mac, I used it, and there were PowerPC binaries in some of my applications. But anyways,
very curious.
I could see them. I could see Apple dropping support a little bit sooner because they have to support both platforms, which can be kind of annoying. It can hold some things back. But I think before that, and we've already seen it with Monterey, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, is features, some features that won't make it over to the Intel Macs. Just like how on iOS, there are some features that you're not going to get on the 6S.
That's true. I hadn't thought about it that way. I had sort of thought about it as, why would they remove features from Intel? But I guess you don't necessarily expect that you're going to get everything
right
on an iPhone 6S. Now, speaking of the 6S, I think that speaks volumes to what the Apple Silicon Macs will be supported for.
Yeah.
While I think it's decently possible that Intel Macs could end up having shorter lifespans, I think that's very possible. But the Apple Silicon ones, I think, are going to be really long-lasting. Like, think about it this way. What's the oldest iPad that can run iPadOS 15? I'm pretty sure it's the iPad Air 2.
I think you're right. I want to say you're right.
I'll look it up so that I don't sound like an idiot. But
wow,
it supports devices pretty far back. And both... Oh, wait, what chip does the 6S is an A9? Yes, because the A10 Fusion was the iPhone 7.
Okay.
So the reason I bring that up is that's well before even the Bionic architecture, which was a huge bump in power and performance. The fact that Apple is supporting the iPhone 6S is absolutely mental, because it means, like, the iPhone 6S is 6 years old now when iOS 15 comes out, which means that it'll be 7 by the time iOS 16 comes out. 7 years of software support on a smartphone.
Yeah.
That is absolutely nuts. That is unheard. No smartphone, I think. Someone's going to find one. But I think it would be genuinely challenging to find a smartphone that has been supported for 7 years.
I can't even imagine
all the, not just security updates, but full software updates.
I mean, Android's notoriously bad at that stuff.
Even the Pixels get 3 years.
Yeah.
For $1,000 phone, you get 3 years of support.
And like, what? I can't imagine there's another phone. Maybe someone will comment, but I can't imagine.
I was right, by the way. iPad Air 2 gets iPadOS 15. The iPad Air 2 came out, drumroll please, October 2014. Dude, it's going to be 8 years old by the time it gets dropped.
Yeah.
That's insane. And my point is, if Apple can support an iPad that has an A8X, it has an A8X, and if they can keep that going for 8 freaking years, the M1 is a 10-year computer.
It definitely, I hope they support it for that long, but they absolutely could. And you lose You'll lose some features along the way, but having the latest version, like even on the 6S, there are some features, I don't know off the top of my head what they are, but there are some features that you miss out on. But still, like for compatibility with apps, like a lot of apps require a certain version of iOS to run, and for a lot of the stuff, and obviously security and whatever, having the latest version, even if you don't get all the frosting features, having the latest version does make a big difference.
Absolutely.
It's really awesome. And speaking of lifespans,
the lifespan of this episode has come to an end.
Indeed.
Very good transition. I was looking for one. You nailed it.
All right. Very good.
There we go. So we will we can pick up this topic if people are interested in it, but I think we got it pretty good. I think the M1s are going to be really, really stellar, long-lasting devices. But that'll do it for us tonight. Thank you all so much for joining us. I've been your host, Luke Miani.
And I've been your host, Noah Rubin. Have a good night.